Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Hearts of Iron 4, The New Order, Last Days of Europe, with me, Alpha by Omega, and Empire of Japan. So in the last episode we got closer to circumventing the efforts of China on the army. The efforts of China are, circumvented all the time because we have them deep within our sphere, but the army, in stopping us from investigating the conspiracy, whatever lies behind that. In the meantime, we have adjusted some of our policies in a way that are allowing us for a steep decrease of debt to GDP. We dropped from something like 103% to 99.5% in less than a year, which is an amazing result. In the meantime, our GDP keeps increasing steadily. Inflation is keeping around 2.5%, so things are generally speaking very good. Soon we're gonna finish the fudge the numbers focus, which, doesn't sound so great, but it is still there. Anyway, let's unpause and let the game go. We've also talked a little bit about our tanks and everything getting better. I'm considering maybe lowering the production here a little bit. Okay, so we're gonna take away one factory from the improved anti-tank missiles. I'll take 2 from the basic motorized equipment and 1 from the tank type 26A. And we're gonna put 2 factories on the type 101 Sapporo and 2 factories on the type 102 Keijo, so that we get a little bit more production of self-propelled artillery and anti-air, because we want to add them to our units eventually. So the Yamahohei Shidan is now finished drilling. The rest is actually still doing it, but we'll see. Piety and Poison. Unfortunately, not everyone was so excited to see the Board of Audit's functional role restored. In order to avoid alerting any potential conspirators or implicating the investigation, the board had resolved to act alone publicly while coordinating and corresponding privately with the investigation. Even though their position within the imperial hierarchy was a point of unrecognized contention, they maintained that their role was fundamentally proactive. They were not intended to simply wait around until whispers of corruption reached the ears of the emperor himself, they claimed. Rather, anytime an issue or inconsistency within the government was brought before them, they were bound by duty and honor to see it resolved. However, the various members and ministries that comprised the cabinet were unmoved by the board's lofty claims. It was the cabinet's view that while the board was independent of every individual ministry, they were not independent of all the ministries taken together. If they allowed for unprompted audits with undisclosed motives and orders, they risked allowing the poison of factionalism back into the imperial government. How could the cabinet be sure that audit was not intended to meet some opportunistic political goal? All the ministries of the cabinet set some form of this argument, save for the army ministry, who essentially screamed it when they found out their files in particular were in question. Seeing this, the joint board investigation team took stock and tried to formulate a new approach. They found that there were 2 possible directions. Either they could try to avoid the cabinet entirely by reaching out to the highest possible levels of Japanese administration, or they could appeal to the division that represented the police in the turmoil of imperial politics, the Bureau of Public Order. Over their heads, bring in the Bureau. Okay, in this case we're gonna go over their heads, because I am really interested in squeezing them. They're starting to really piss me off, honestly. Okay, what did we want to do here? We wanted the inter-service training program. Yep, so that one would be the good one, because that increases the support and lowers the paranoia. And then we can start focusing on the imperial diet again, and then we can even try to get a bit more support. I'm really failing at that goal of keeping my political power intact and saved, but, well, what can you do? Okay, so if you fudge the numbers, now we can expand the lobbying, which is gonna increase relations with the conservatives, and it gives us Industrial Freedoms Act and activate submission bill in the Diet. Our Diet has many issues to contend with and is far from all-knowing. Lobbying from industries and interest groups shall be expanded to allow for greater understanding of the correct paths for Japan's future, far from the radical ideas of Japan-hating elements. Okay. So let's see what this one is going to be like. Misdirected meditation. Oh, and the wild ones. Okay, we're starting to get swamped in events here. Misdirected mediation. Overwhelmed by the politics of the cabinet, there was only one body left in the investigation that could look up. That we could look up to for assistance, and this one required them to look so high they risked spraining their necks. It was poorly kept secret that in the lead-up to the First War with the Chinese back in 1894, the bickering between the Imperial Army and Navy became so intense it threatened to tear apart the war effort before it even began. To resolve this, the Emperor Meiji ordered the creation of the Imperial General Headquarters, an organization intended to coordinate and resolve disputes between the branches. With the Emperor himself as its head, this was the only body with legal administrative authority over the two juggernauts that comprised the military forces of the Empire. So it was even more of a shock when the headquarters responded to the investigation's appeals with instructions to consult the Army Ministry for processing such requests. At first, most believed that the staff were simply playing the same game of delaying and deflecting that the office of the Army had, but further correspondence proved otherwise. The role, the headquarters claimed, was purely mediatory and coordinative, not administrative. It was neither their responsibility to manage the branch's interaction with external offices, nor was it prerogative to override their decisions in that respect. Defeated, the investigative team and their lead detective were forced to return to the drawing board. It was clear there was no viable route by which they could access and examine the inner workings of the army. Whether this was due to complacency or pure stubbornness was irrelevant. In either case, more proactive means of investigation were now required. Well, so much for playing nice. And the wild ones. Use stability. Midnight Shinjuku. The chilly winds snake through the giant Otakyu department stores, but at night the Kulitsi shopping and finance district turns into something else entirely. Those who cover during the day crawl out of their comfort zones at night, and aka Nakajima is no different. Lighting a cigarette, aka heaves and leans back into his precious Midori. But Midori is no schoolmate, neither is she a courtesan. Midori moans louder than any girlfriend Eika's had, and Eika could ride her for hours, or as much as he pleases. All there is now is silence, until the familiar hums of other engines come within his earshot. The free rev-roar was familiar. It was Ryu and the boys from Setagaya. Coolly taking another drag from his cigarette, Eika gestures warmly to the older man. "How's that scar treating you, you magnificent Mongol slayer?" "Quit it, kid. You don't know anything till you've been in the shit," replied Ryu dryly. Eika zips up his boiler suit and puts out his cigarette before his hachimaki around his forehead. A sign of rebellion against the state establishment, bikers like Akka take signs of patriotism and own it for themselves. "All right, old man, so where am I taking Midori tonight?" "Out to the ports, other side of Tokyo. If we get there by 2, why not ride around in Saitama for a bit?" Akka, Ryu, and 3 other bikers turn tail, rev their engines, and ride off into the night. Several meters behind them, a seemingly unoccupied Toyota switches on its headlamps. Inside the car are two plainclothes officers, silently watching Akka and the bikers for a while now. The flame of youth is often hard to extinguish. Okay then. It's 10th of October. Okay, hospital construction, anti-air upgrades. Okay, the administrative efficiency is increasing. We now gain a little bit more political power. Would be best if we could actually remove some of the penalties though, like the Zaibat's question, which is literally taking away half of our political power per day. But alas, it's not to be. Okay, I lost a little bit of production units, I guess due to trade. Wait, what did I want? Oh yeah, the intelligence agency. So we finished the passive defense. Now let's get the economy department running. We'll see if we can get more information. An unscheduled meeting. After the stern rebuff by the Imperial General Headquarters, the investigation's momentum was stunted. With no other obvious place to turn or path to take, the detectives began the slow march of backtracking. They would have to reconsider each choice, reread every document they had collected, and, if all else fails, consider a different route entirely. Fortunately, their luck began to turn before they had taken more than a few steps back up the path. Early one afternoon, a man came into the station, walked up to the front desk, and politely requested a meeting with the chief. He was a tall, middle-aged man, clean-shaven with neatly trimmed hair, and came with a coat draped over his arm and a black leather briefcase in hand. Intrigued by the desk worker's description of him over the phone, the chief agreed to speak with him. After the man arrived on the right floor and pulled the door of the chief's office closed, the two were locked in conversation for the better part of an hour. Eventually, the office door was pulled open again. The man emerged while the chief lingered in the doorway. They shook hands, bid each other farewell, and then the man walked past the rows of desks and out of the department. When he had left, the chief strode from the doorway over to Guerrero's desk and tossed a small stack of papers onto it. The Navy sends its regards. In a good way or a bad way? Nice. Well, and interesting friends in interesting places. So now let us get the inter-service training program. Increases the support and lowers the paranoia. Good. Well, I mean, who would have guessed that the Navy would come against the Army? Like, everyone, right? Everyone. So what about the poverty? It is still increasing, unfortunately. Trade in the sphere is increasing, though. Agricultural yields are increasing. We have more men in the military now. Oh wait, we're paused. I was thinking not much is happening. And I was right, not much is happening. Okay. Fuel is being stockpiled, that's great. Okay, and we finished an improved carrier tonne. Okay, but it has no air wings. That is actually a little bit weird. So let's put you into drilling. And here we have Musashi. So did we deal with this? We haven't. Okay, so it can be assigned to the first Kantai, so that we start having some battleships now as well. When's the next ship coming? The Hakkō office very soon. 6th of November. Okay. Okay, the Hall office. While the information given by the man from the Navy Ministry was not so significant in itself, its potential implications certainly were. It seemed that the appeals to the Imperial General Headquarters by the investigation had attracted the attention of the other half of the Japanese armed forces. According to the testimony of the man, a member of the Navy Ministry, not only was in the IGHQ's dismissal of the investigation unremarkable, it was downright anticipated. A member of the Navy Ministry. According to the testimony of the man, a member of the Navy's Ministry. Not only was the dismissal of the investigation unremarkable, it was anticipated. He claimed that the General Headquarters had long since been gutted and largely stripped of its authority by the efforts and ambitions of the Army. Through a combination of vocal protests and outright defiance, the Army Ministry had effectively neutered any potential for an outside party to audit their inner workings. As the headquarters was partly controlled by the Army, any mandate the organization attempted to give to the IJA would immediately result in half their staff conspiring against them. As such, it was now nearly impossible to bypass the ever-convenient claims of issues of national security the Army gave whenever faced with an inquest. The papers he had provided seemed to confirm this, with dozens of reports of the IGHQ efforts and functions halted in their tracks with seemingly little justification. So they're basically completely independent now. That is unbelievably scary. These considerations, while hugely impactful, were well beyond the authority of the Tokyo police to investigate. The two detectives agreed that this would require nothing less than a cabinet-level intervention. Where they disagreed was on which part of the cabinet they should involve. Tachi held that this was significant enough on its own to be brought before the general view of the cabinet, while Kodaira felt they should consult the representative office in the Home Ministry, the Bureau of Public Order. Okay, now this is definitely a big choice. But let's blow the whistle and bring this in front of the cabinet. Oh wait, we actually finished a couple of constructions here. Okay, administrative complex, base coverage, school coverage. Let's build a couple of schools next. Yeah, right now I'll mix them in with more offices. Thus improving everything for ourselves. The growth is really looking good. How's Germany doing? We haven't really seen any news from them. Hitler is still in power. Mercenaries, the American ambassador. Controversy in the cabinet. Okay, hold on, we got extra production units. A lot of them actually, so let me put them all on construction. As expected, the investigation's demands for accountability from the Army Ministry were met with furious opposition, mostly from the office in question. It seemed at the moment that the paperwork was placed in the hands of the workers at the Cabinet's general offices, a storm of controversy engulfed the whole forum. Of course, the mere implication that some subversive action had been carried out by the army kicked off an accompanying flurry of speculations, further straining the already tense situation. The representatives of the army ministry systematically alternated between unflinching defenses of their position and fear attacks on the motivations behind the demands. They claimed that the oversight of internal military systems and operations of law enforcement were specifically designed to be separate from domestic civil authorities in the interests of national security and administrative autonomy. Well, go figure. In the next breath, they denied the legitimacy of the investigation's pursuits, claiming they had already provided enough information to reach reasonable conclusions, and the continued efforts to subvert the established separation of authorities was tantamount to political tampering. Well, go figure. The subtle insinuation that all external oversight into the army was illegitimate did not sit well with many of the ministries of state, some grumbling with concerns about precedents and procedures. But many others tactfully supported some of the key points given by the army, agreeing in principle with some concerns of practice. But the powerhouses of the Home Ministry and Navy Ministry remained silent, forcing the cabinet into gridlock, leaving the pressure to build even further. We will weather the storm. I mean, Army and Navy should never be completely independent. They can retain a lot of independence, but at least some kind of control has to be asserted. Or at least like the audit office should be able to, sort of control them and a whistleblower when it comes down to it. But what do we know? We'll see what's gonna happen. Where this is gonna lead us. And we have a lot of dockyards. Solidarity of the soldiers. Eventually, after days of debate in the Cabinet Assembly, a new perspective was offered to the floor. The Navy Ministry, which up until that point had remained mostly silent and seemingly withdrawn from the issue, put forth their first statement since the whole affair began. But as they quickly made clear, the statement did not come from the ministry itself, in a sense. Rather, they were giving it on the request of the Navy General Staff Office. But the position put forth by what was thought to be Army's fierce rival was almost unbelievable. The Staff Office justified the relevance of providing their opinion on the basis of their shared membership of the Supreme War Council with the Army Ministry, which they claimed played an essential military and political role. They initially reiterated the Army's position on the preservation of the independence of organizations and potential security ramifications, but afterward made a much stronger claim. They maintained that the rights to exclusive authority over legal investigation of military affairs rested solely with the internal system of the respective branch, purely on the basis of military operational security. By this fact alone, they claimed, no other non-subordinate office of state could attempt to subvert the judgment of said system without violating systematic independence. The investigation team was left baffled, none more so than the lead detectives. They had fully anticipated that all elements of the Navy would have taken this opportunity to assert dominance over their bureaucratic rival, not stand by their side. Of all the times the Navy could have chosen to develop a sense of solidarity, why now? A little suspicious, don't you think? I do. And it's 2nd of November, and debt to GDP dropped to 99.1%. Okay, a little worse than I expected it to be, but still amazing job. Debt servicing still at 3.89 billion. Here the surplus is only 1.3%. So what is really dropping is the relative debt. We are really not repaying our debt that much. We're still sitting at 258 billion of debt. But, we're repaying that. 1.3% of it to be exact. Though, the euro surplus is 3.4 billion at this point. So that's what we're gonna repay. And I think we started somewhere at like 260. So it's gonna end at something like 257. Those who control the present. Looking at her clipboard, Yoshika scanned the list of names, looking up for students that hadn't read the textbook. Her eyes landed upon Kojima Keitaro. Turning to his direction, she asked, "Keitaro-chan, Could you please read for the class? He silently nodded, turning to his book. Seemingly having forgotten what paragraph he was to read, he slightly panicked. The class grew a little louder as whispers between friends began to start. Seeing this dilemma, she saved him. The greedy Chiang government, she loudly whispered. Thanking Yoshike, he began to read. The greedy Chiang government in China, in a bid to distract the people of China from their poor lives, staged an incident along the Lugu Bridge in order to start a war. We responded. Kate Tyrus squinted his eyes. Appropriately. The Chiang government and the communists had been fighting with each other, which destroyed China, but they came together to attempt to hold. Keitaro stopped, and Yoshike intervened to save him again. Liberation. Liberation back. After a long war, Pan-Asian unity had prevailed, and the Chinese people were happy. Keitaro slumped back in his seat, having played his part. Thank you, Keitaro. Now, Yoshike picked up a stack of papers. You will be doing an activity that will focus on the paragraphs we have just read. Yoshike-sensei, will we be learning more about this later? One of our students, Sayo, inquired. Yes, you will learn more about the China War in later grades. Yoshike passed out the worksheets as the pupils began to write as soon as they received the papers. Control the past. Well, for sure. Choosing a lead. With the list of details and various leads of the case growing ever longer and beginning to twist and intertwine with each other, the investigation was beginning to find its resources spread thin. Furthermore, the parallel investigation methods that had served them so well at the start was now beginning to cause the various teams to stumble over each other, and on more than one occasion found themselves uncovering or dealing with redundant information. To that end, the two head detectives decided it was time to simplify the investigation process by pursuing one lead in particular. They figured that if the lead already overlapped this much, then following one to its end should lead to the resolution of all of them. It just came down to choosing which was the best one to follow. It was time to simplify the investigation process. Okay, so we have to choose here. Follow the shipping lead, follow the minister lead, follow the IJN-GSO lead. Let's follow the minister lead, whatever that one is. I'm not entirely sure, but we'll see. I think we can actually keep... Yeah, we have enough everywhere, so we can start saving up a little bit of political power for now. Just to make sure that we will not spend too much of it. And we're suffering again when it comes to the production. But what can we do? What? Oh, okay. Like this. A tough crowd. Wait, and I think we finished... Yeah, we finished another one of the refits, didn't we? Yep. Key. So we are now a nuclear battleship, basically. Yep. Pretty good news. So Key will be assigned to the second Kantai. It was actually already assigned to it. And we are going to, because we finished the expand lobbying focus, and go with the adjust the budget. That's the only one we actually can go with, so not much else that we can do. Another issue is in the budget, which is in need of updating. The needs of our brave armies and courageous navies are constantly shifting, and so the needs of the helpless people of the sphere who need our benevolence. We shall continue to adjust the budget accordingly. So we're going to get two events, crushed underfoot and the green light. And maximizing growth is going to be modified by 5%. So that means our construction speed is going to go up to plus 15%. Sense of security, production efficiency growth, and efficiency base, maximizing growth. Okay, not that many national spirits at this point, but we'll see. Again, we have more production units again. The trade, my friends, is where it all lies. So fuel is happening, everything is happening. The drilling is almost done. So let's just end this episode by revising our stockpiles, and then we're gonna call it a day and leave these events for the next time. So we got 1.6 thousand units of anti-air, 764 units of regular artillery, 30 of attack helicopters, 5,500 of infantry equipment, 1.3 thousand of motorized equipment, 1.3 thousand of support equipment, with 144 stockpiled AFVs, 177 stockpiled MBTs, 500 APCs, okay, we're not using or producing those, 40 trains, 152 transport helicopters, 14 heavy self-propelled anti-airs, 14 heavy self-propelled artilleries, okay, so we're starting to stockpile those, and I have 1,500 guided missiles, 38 transport planes. We're missing 400 fighters and 473 close air support planes, okay, but it's not 700 that we used to have before. We're missing 10 tactical bombers, 544 strategic bombers, and 693 interceptors. Okay, shortage 2,407 days, 4,218 days, and close air support 1,666 days. Jesus Christ. Well, after we finish the last drillings of you guys, we are going to look at the Air Force, and we are going to disperse some of the wings because we cannot really, realistically fulfill that at this point. Unless we, crazily strengthen the production line, but I mean, I'm not saying we're not going to do that, but we're not going to do that anytime soon. Not to mention that eventually we will need to upgrade them to new models. So we're going to end this episode on the high note. Our debt is now 258 billion and our GDP is 260 billion, meaning we're at debt to GDP ratio of 99.1%. Perfect. So thank you very much for joining me, and I'll see you in the next episode where we continue with the story of Empire of Japan. 1962 slowly going to end soon. Yeah, we're gonna enter our second year, maybe even in the next episode. So till then, you guys take care.